You know what? Everybody thinks that moderates are good. I don't hear people saying moderates fat. I mean, some people do. I read though the centrists and they're the neoliberals and they say bad things about them, which is good. I don't like. We should say bad things about them. Anyway, but the thing is, can we please stop fawning over the political moderates in this country? They are the ones we should be blaming for the mess that we are in, and instead everyone is fawning over them and blaming the people on the either end of the political spectrum for the rancor and the discord that are tearing this country apart. I keep hearing that the irrational nutcases on the far left, far right are preventing the mature and the reasonable moderates from accomplishing anything. But that's a load of crap. The devotees of Bernie and AOC and the followers of the populist counterpart, that orange madman Donald Trump, they're the ones who are clamoring for change, and maybe their solutions are not always so great. But at least they have the sense to be upset that this country has turned into a big wreck. The moderates, on the other hand, they do nothing but sit around, mouthing platitudes. Lately, their big proclamation is that Trump and his rabid fans are a threat to our democracy. They keep flinging that word around, democracy, with evangelistic righteousness. What the fuck kind of democracy do we have, people? All those crazies storming through the Capitol on January 6th, 2001. They weren't destroying our democracy. They were trampling over the remnants of the democracy. This country was a wreck before January 6th, before the pandemic, before Trump became president. But all those years, the wreckage was covered up by this facade of stability. Like we were like a house with a weakened structure, with the beams and the boards all rotted on the inside. And we ignored the signs of impending collapse until the 2016 election blew the roof off and exposed all the rot. And now everyone is boo-hoo, we are doomed. Well, our problems didn't happen all of a sudden, people. The country started going to hell, in my opinion, when Ronald Reagan became president. After declaring that he was going to repair our tanking economy with something called trickle-down economics. That meant giving big businesses free rein to do whatever the hell they wanted, which would ultimately result in the creation of millions of wonderful jobs, and presto, the economy would be restored to its post-World War II robustness. Obviously, that turned out to be a crock of shit. The big businesses used their burgeoning wealth to do all kinds of bad things, including poison the planet and consolidate into monstrous conglomerates that took over the whole world. And then they and their beneficiaries got their greedy hands on practically all of our country's wealth, leaving the rest of us with scraps. And who is responsible for the care and feeding of the oligarchy our country has become? The moderates. It's not the progressives or the MAGA people that are standing in the way of economic reform. It is the centrists who detach themselves from the devastation produced by capitalism run amok. The centrist Democrats and their never Trump Republican friends, who are still beholden to their oligarch donors and benefactors and sponsors, whatever they are, go on cable TV and blither and blather about how civil and nice the Reagan Republicans were compared to these terrible Trump people, as though there was no connection between them. And I'll tell you, if it wasn't for Reagan's despicable policy setting the stage for 4 decades of heartless neoconservative politics that disenfranchised the majority of Americans, Trump never would have become president. If you are old enough, you certainly remember when Reagan tearfully announced that our country was transitioning from a manufacturing economy to a service economy. It was morning in America. Well, after the war on labor unions, the shuttering of factories, and the destruction of the manufacturing base, the millions of workers who suddenly found themselves without a job or without any reasonable job prospects, they did not exactly see the glorious sun rising over the horizon. Basically, they were fucked. Thousands of them committed suicide. And those that didn't got crappy little jobs in Reagan's vaunted service economy for less than half of what they had been earning as union workers. And since then, the whole economy has collapsed on the heads of average Americans. The minimum wage hasn't gone up in decades. Millions of people working 40 hours a week can't support themselves or their families, and thousands of them are living in their cars and collecting food stamps. Free of union oversight, most employers have absolute power over their workers, firing them without cause, ordering them to work unpredictable shifts, and managing them with dehumanizing algorithms rather than human contact. There is no more job security, no one to negotiate higher wages, sick leave, family leave, or vacation pay. Pensions are a thing of the past. People who go to college to escape blue collar hell and end up in equally precarious situations. College graduates are making payments on their student loans for the rest of their lives. People with advanced degrees are driving for Uber or making a pittance as associate professors or working at shitty little white collar jobs, never knowing when their superiors will inform them that their services are no longer needed and they have to be escorted out of their offices by security guards before the pitying eyes of their coworkers. We all know that our healthcare system is in tatters. Medical debts wipe out the savings of many thousands of people every year. Forget trying to find reliable mental health services. Today's domiciles for the mentally ill are prisons, custodial nursing homes, and the streets. Our elected representatives are too busy raising money for their war chest to prevent the entire country from descending into chaos. Homeless people and drug addicts are camped out in whole sections of our cities and towns. Our prison system is notoriously barbaric. Young men are running around with guns killing people, and fires and tornadoes and floods are wiping out whole communities. And yet, the moderate Democrats did everything they could to sabotage the presidential campaign of the one candidate who had not only expressed appropriate horror over these developments, but who had built an entire movement of millions of passionate supporters who embraced his strategies for rescuing the damn country. And now, of course, the pandemic is further sucking the lifeblood out of our debilitated body politic. And while Bernie Sanders continues his possibly quixotic but no less valiant efforts to improve the quality of life of struggling Americans, the moderates spend their time obsessing about the so-called insurrection that was just a riot, caterwauling over the anti-vaxxers, and awarding billions of dollars every year to the Pentagon war machine that could be used for programs to lift their fellow citizens out of emotional, economic, and spiritual despair. The moderates are always blaming the so-called radicals for impeding progress when they are the ones who never offer any solutions to our escalating problems. Bernie's Democratic Socialists are organizing around reasonable safety nets, such as a federal living wage, health care for all, free public college, student debt relief, and workers' rights. The so-called woke movement is on a campaign to correct the distorted narrative about this country's history and empower oppressed people. Trump fans evangelize about prioritizing Americans over undocumented immigrants for jobs, depending on neighbors and families rather than government handouts for help, calling out the liberal media for its lack of balanced reporting, and fighting against the perceived excesses of cancel culture. So whether they are right or wrong, the lefties and righties stand for something. What do the moderates stand for? Incrementalism? The way I see it, they lack passion for change in a country that is in desperate need of change. They are waving their arms around trying to shut up everyone who is yelling for someone to do something. The reason the moderates keep trying to shut up the rabble-rousers that they keep babbling about reaching across the aisle and the value of compromise is that they think the country is okay the way it is. They live in these weird bubbles and seem oblivious to the suffering taking place all around them. Or maybe they are aware of it, but they don't want to do anything about it. Maybe they are wolves in sheep's clothing, and the so-called radicals who are trying to get things done are the sheep